define these things, because this is going to help lead to one another. I mean, if we don't know what freedom is, then we're going to be enslaved, or we're not going to know how to get out of our enslavement. If we don't know, if we are free, then it's like, how could we secure that freedom? How do we defend it? And this is the idea. So somebody asked, this is the first question that we received in the chat: how do we become more united? There are many groups that oppose being controlled in one form or another, but we are more powerful together, yet we are too scattered. So I want to start with Aaron. I'm sorry, I was going to put you on the spotlight, but you're first. You're on the left, so I want to just go row by row, if you don't mind. Aaron, how would you answer that question? How do we become more united?
Well, I would just start off with the philosophy that we are all part of the human species, and we are all on a fundamental level the same, with our own individual experiences, and recognizing that, and trying to align with principles that essentially do unite you with other people. And it starts with the change in the mind, and it starts with your own actions and your own behavior. And if you make divisive actions, or actions that separate you from anyone else or any other person, then that's already off onto the wrong path. So the first part is changing your own mind, and coming to the realization that we are the spiritual beings living in this experience that would seem to be separate from other people, but in reality we are all the same. And just starting with that sentiment in any position that you're in is just don't separate yourself from other people or anything that's going on. And I think that's probably a pretty great start.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, if I think back to even when I was younger and I didn't really have a deep understanding of all these principles, at no point in my life did I ever think that people were less valuable because of the color of their skin or their thinking. Maybe I was a little less tolerant of different opinions at some points in my life. But now the way I look at it is, we're all part of the same species. And I think as long as we can agree on principles, as long as we can agree on the kind of reality that we want to create together, the rest is all details. And I love the differences that we have. I mean, one thing I love about being involved in this community, and even the greater community beyond even just us here and those who participate in the summit, is it's amazing to see so many differences, and yet people all have that underlying desire to fulfill the freedom of a human being, the infinite value of a human being, and the core principles which align us. And that's really, for me, that's enough. We don't have to agree on all the other details. I wouldn't want us to. That would be frankly boring and very weird if everybody was the same. I think that's the beauty of it, and the art of living is everyone gets to choose how they want to express their uniqueness. So I've never seen that as an issue. And even if I disagree, even on maybe even what people might consider bigger points that certain people make in the greater community, again, as long as everybody's more or less geared towards the same thing, which is we all agree that the ultimate goal of a human being is to be self-autonomous, self-sovereign, to have self-responsibility and not to be ruled over by others. If we can agree that there are certain core principles, then how we go about it, the discourse we use, the way we do it, the way we think about specific topics, and even how we perhaps approach people who don't understand these things, this is going to vary greatly. So I think one thing is just don't try to make an enemy or an adversary out of someone if they're in that camp. And there's no point in that, because then you're just dividing yourself from the very people that actually could help you to achieve that important goal.
Beautiful. Will?
Yeah, I agree with Aaron and David. I mean, this principles, the word principle means first things first. So, the three principles of sovereignty is self-ownership, non-aggression, and self-defense. You're responsible for yourself and your actions. Accountability. You owe everyone one thing: do no harm. And if aggressed upon, you have the right to defend yourself. So it's pretty simple. Those three facts that truth right there unites everyone, because the common denominator is freedom, right? Unrestricted free will expression, which I would say is the divine intention or the cosmic will. This is built in nature. I mean, plants, animals, everything wants to be able to express itself freely. This is what consciousness is expansion and creativity. So, but principles, I'll have to stick it on that. Absolutely.
All right. And Patrick.
I guess I'm in with the hot takes again. So
hey, that's what we're looking for. Let's go.
I guess, we have to necessarily project what we think the questioner meant when they said unity. So I'm just going to do that, come what may. I think unity is mostly overrated. I think unity is unity is putting the cause itself as a higher priority than the principles driving the cause. Perfect example would be science over the past 3 years. What went wrong, and what we're just now finding out from the leaks of the emails from Fauci and others, is that I can't say it's the first time, probably isn't, but for the first time in a major world-changing way, they put the cause of people's faith and unity behind science, quote-unquote science, ahead of science. And what they did in doing so was destroy everyone's faith in scientists and science. So I see beauty in the immense number of types of liberty people. And I use that as a very, very generic term on purpose, because there's so many different types. You have your political types. You have your just normal, go to a job but wants to be free and left alone type. You have your, moral vegan types. You have and they don't have to come together. They just have to leave each other alone. And there is so much beauty in that, and there's strength in that. All these other groups can't keep from self-fracturing every 8 years. Like the Republicans, every 8 years there's some new hyphenated name for a new conservative. Same for the Democrats. Anytime you try and unify people, they naturally, just because we're all so different, fracture. And so I'm almost in the position where I'm like, hey, let's stop worrying about unity and just leave each other alone and prosper and appreciate each other for our differences.
Right.
And in doing so, we also get to refine our philosophy much faster, because when we disagree with each other respectfully, we refine our ideas much faster than the competition. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. I think those are great thoughts. And like I said, you guys can hop in anytime you want to share your thoughts too about that. But it is true. I mean, even if you look in certain communities around the world, we call them New Age communities. They'll say, oh, we need unity and love. And sometimes it sounds too good to be true, because to some extent it is. It's like we are different individually. We are unique. So it's a paradox in a sense of understanding, like, yeah, we all are equal in rights, may you say, or we're equal as we're born to have the same functions. We're all in the same capacity to understand these concepts. But, at the same time, we're all going to have different perspectives, different experiences, so many different things. So it's a matter of understanding, like, the time and place, or, what really is there. It's both. I mean, it's like, this is why people get trapped into one way of thinking. I think it's beautiful, Patrick. I've talked to you before about this, is just expanding our worldviews and constantly refining. I think that's incredible. I mean, this is why you have anti-subjectivism, the philosophy of consent. I have my naturosophy, my own philosophies. But we're not asking for people to agree with us. We're sharing it with them, and they can do what they want with it. They have to look into their own world and find out if it works. And we're not telling other people to impose their will with violence. That's the difference between us and the people who want to uphold the slave system, we're claiming. Am I correct, Patrick, on that? I know you.
Yeah, and there's one big exception to what I'm talking about, where unity is really a good thing, and it's around helping people that are in need. And so I just want to take this as an opportunity to shout out Voluntary Virtue as a 501c3 nonprofit that helps libertarian people that are in a bad way. Maybe you caught a disease, something happened in your life voluntary virtue is able to take donations from people and then help those people. And so getting a bunch of people of completely different ideas, like they don't have to agree on anything other than leaving each other alone in liberty, and they can donate and we can do good with that money. That's unification in a really good, strong, healthy way that I'm all about.
All right. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, Drew. I think we provided a lot of different perspectives on that. And of course, feel free to think about it for yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments too. Don't just depend on us for it. I'd be open to hearing what you have to think about it as well in reflection. But I do notice, over the past couple of years, you see a lot of people from the health side, right? The practitioners, the doctors coming over to the freedom side. And they're realizing, wait, we got to look at freedom because our health freedom is going away. And then I'm starting to see the same thing with people in the spiritual New Age camp, or the people who are self-care, self-help camp on YouTube, and all these content creators. Some of them have millions of subscribers. They're starting to come into these communities because there's so many perspectives. So like Mark Passio, for example, a lot of his stuff is like self-care and spirituality, which might appeal to a lot of this generation. Like I'm in that generation. I think it appeals to my generation because a lot of my generation, it's like we lack purpose, we lack faith. Not that this is the answer to those problems, it's that it helps us find another way of helping ourselves and looking at the world in a new light, because the current systems are just not helping people. So people are going to try to find anything out of that system currently. Sometimes in bad ways. They might use drugs, they might overdose on something. There's bad ways of coping with the world, and then there's ways of actually healing it. And David, you talk about this in your seminar, of course, of healing trauma and looking through shadow work. So there's so much integral natures going on here where everybody's working together because we're just filling in the gaps that need to be filled. So like, Patrick is filling in the philosophy. I met somebody recently who's a Christian anarchist, and some of you guys have very strong views on religion. Like, I think that's beautiful. You have some people who agree with that, disagree with that, but no one's using violence against each other. This is the key. Slavery is somebody imposing their will on others, claiming ownership over their life and property. We're not doing that. We're having a discussion. We're opening a discussion. We're sharing ideas. We're creating new ideas. We're creating our communities that we want directly. That's the free world. Thousands of solutions, not just one. So we're practicing it right now. I think that's great. Do you guys want to move to the next question, or any final thoughts?
I guess a final thought is, and it's towards Patrick. Sorry to interrupt, Will. It's towards Patrick's point is that, in order to join, something, in order to be unified with, a cause, or unified with humanity, it's like you have to individuate yourself. Otherwise, you're just joining anything. And so having the self-respect and the self-ownership to distinguish yourself from the rest, it's only from that point, that you're able to actually unify with, principles.
Yeah. All right. Will, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I was going to just say, there is a unification in identifying the problem, because there is a problem. There is a correct answer, and that answer is slavery, right? This is kind of what a lot of our work is about, is to give people the knowledge and the information so that they can make that self-realization of the major issue in the world. And this is important, of getting it down to the causal factor of mind, of ideologies, what people believe. And so that is a unifying factor, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Astro, you asked a good question in the chat. You said, so what's with the slavery and the imagery if you're not talking about being enslaved by anything? So, of course, and it's okay, there's going to be a lot of people coming into the chat and they're not going to know like what slavery we're talking about, and we're going to have to repeat ourselves many times for this purpose, and hopefully you guys are okay with that. But the slavery that we're particularly talking about is slavery by politics, by government, by people who claim that they can do an action which we would see as immoral, but everybody sees them as moral for committing an immoral action that we can't commit. So it's, yeah, you can look into the website and you can check out day one and start from the beginning and check it out. But if you have any questions based on what I just said, it's always better to learn, through asking questions and learning for yourself. So this is more so a refinement. If anybody has any questions about what they saw in the summit or in general, but I'm glad to always meet new people who are new to this knowledge. That's also why we're doing this, is for outreach. So many reasons why we're doing this, right? I mean, it helps people on an individual level too. So many reasons, I would say. Do your vocal magic. Yeah, I feel like I have trouble because I don't want to repeat myself. I don't like having talking points, and then there's like 100 different ways to approach the same subject, and it's like, my mind is all over the place, and then I have to do all these things at the same time. But if you guys want to answer that question, feel free, because that would help me.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So
Sure.
I think for me, it really helped me to understand that all forms of slavery ultimately start and maybe even end with a form of mental slavery. In other words, someone not having complete control over their own mind and complete control to enact what Will mentioned earlier, which is obviously don't cause harm, but also defend oneself. Basically, I mean, it has to start in the mind somehow. So that's why I think what Corey was saying is you have to put it in the work to go and study, and whether it's spending 16 days going through material, or I mean, it's going to be for all of us, it's a lifetime of study. I mean, I've been studying this material intensely for about a year and a half, and I feel like I'm just getting started, and I feel like I know for a fact that there's always going to be something new to learn, a new way to grasp it, a new way to understand it. So I think if you can appreciate the fact that, yeah, the core truths may be very simple and easy to explain, but if you're so behind, if you spent your whole life thinking a certain way, that it's going to take a certain amount of time and self-reflection in order to come out of that mindset, because really it is a mindset more than anything else. Statism is a belief system. It is a form of religion. It's a belief that that someone has to hold in their mind in order for it to continue to manifest in reality, or have manifested. So yeah, I mean, that's how I look at it. And I think that's why the study part and approaching that, and being willing to pay the real price to obtain that knowledge is going to be really important.
Yeah. I'll put also questions on the screen for people who are new to this, because I like to always share these questions. But one of the questions that you can ask yourself to really simply get yourself thinking about this, because the last thing I want is for anybody just to take my word on this, although of course we're speaking on a very important topic, slavery. I mean, to say it's still existing, I think is very important, especially considering the fact the abolitionists said it too, and we have the historical proof for it. But here's a bunch of questions, and one of the questions I like to ask people is, does anyone have a higher claim over your life or property than you, right? And can you delegate a right that you don't have to a group of individuals or masses of individuals? Like, if you don't have the right to steal from someone, does it make it right if somebody's wearing a badge, a uniform, or they're a politician? What gives them that right? Is it the piece of paper? Is it the process they're going through? And you just start evaluating that logic. And that is what we're trying to study. So, next question here is...
Let me say something quick about slavery. I think it's important to really address this head on, because if you invoked the label of slavery, to call something slavery that wasn't, that would be kind of a shitty thing to do. I mean, like almost abhorrent, to conjure up slavery about something unrelated. So I think it's really important to make it super clear. Like, government is a technology for people control. And over the course of history, that technology has evolved and improved and gotten better and better at controlling people, and having those people want to resist that control less and less, and think and believe and feel that they aren't in fact even being controlled. They're just living their life normally, and that they actually, tacitly have consented to this governance. But if we think back to like a plantation where we're actually talking about slavery and we actually have slaves, we have people that are exerting ownership claims over other humans, which is slavery. If those plantation owners had gone to their slaves and said, hey guys, guess what? I've really been feeling bad about this slavery thing. I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to let you go and work on any plantation you want. I'm going to let you even start your own plantation if you want. And the only thing I'm going to ask in exchange for your freedom and for my protection is 40% of whatever your profit is on whatever plantation you work on, even if you start your own plantation. Do you have the ability to to go out and work and create wealth on your own for free and not pay me my 40%? No, and if you do, I'll throw you back in a cage. Are those quote unquote former slaves any less enslaved? Do they have they had an ownership claim exerted upon them to any less degree by being given choices in what plantation they're working on and what percentage of their wealth that they're keeping? Well, obviously this is a direct analog to modern times. We've got multiple layers of plantations, federal, state, and local governments that let us work only by their permission, and they take out of our productive essence a percentage of their choosing. And we don't have permission nor the capability to really escape that. So that slavery, that governance technology, still exists, hasn't gone away. It's just been improved.
Yeah, great
Well
point.
said.
Great point. I think Frederick Douglass says this too in his own autobiography. He's like, "Wow, I feel better. The master is whipping me less, and making my conditions better." But then he realized that's actually more dangerous. Lessening taxation or lessening the chains, because it grew him comfortable in that condition of slavery, because he was still a slave. Even though he was less, overtly a slave, he was still a slave nonetheless. So it made him comfortable with his slavery, and he saw that as more dangerous. And this is, you can relate this to republics or democracies or these ideas of limited government. It's like, how could you limit a wrong action if everybody sees it as legitimate? Violence, if you're allowing it to happen and no one is really educating each other on, well, it being wrong, and, no matter who does it, I mean, it's going to continually grow no matter what. And this is what we see throughout history. These governments rise and fall, and we never really get to the root as to what gives these people power to begin with. Why did Hitler do what he did? Why did Stalin do what he did? Why did Mao do what he did? They're just one person. It wasn't them. It was the masses that followed them. And that is the belief system that we're tackling. Patrick, I think you said that beautifully.
And getting to vote on who's holding the whip every few years doesn't change the state of the situation. And the biggest trick that ever existed, maybe ever, is getting everybody to think that they're actually in control by giving them that little vote to choose who's holding the whip. To the point where people will even fight each other because they're proud of what plantation they're enslaved to. Anyway, sorry to drag out that point. I just thought it was important because, you're calling the summit, against slavery. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, again, there's over 50 different interviews you guys can watch where I ask everybody, how they define slavery. And you'll see, I mean, people are not stupid. We learn a little bit about slavery in school. We have a foundation. Most people see violence as wrong. We simply are just not looking at politics and relating that to this, or seeing what history has actually told us. I mean, these abolitionists were not just talking about chattel slavery, and we have all the proof. And William Douglas was somebody who was going to join this panel. He couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately, but he also has a bunch of historical proof. He has a website called the Latter Day Liberator, and the Latter Day Liberator, sorry, and he goes over these, and articles are like very long and textual, very detailed, beautiful work. You'll see him on day 16, everybody. That's today. You can just find his talk if you haven't seen it yet. Would recommend it. So now we have another question here.
I'm gonna go ahead and step out. It was a pleasure hanging out, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Take care,
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick. Can I just follow up on
Sure.
something, Patrick,
Yeah.
real quick? The technology that Patrick was talking about is so good. Just to give an example, it's so good that it literally, like, the whole purpose of authority, in order for this to work, in order for people to buy into this belief system, it has to convince you of a couple of things. One thing it has to convince you, the main thing I think it has to convince you, is that you're not as valuable. Your life doesn't have as much value as it actually has. In other words, you're not infinitely valuable, which you are. Each of us is. And nobody has more value or less value, more rights or less rights. That's the truth. But if for authority to work, for any kind of authority to work, whether it's a government or a king or whatever manifestation, all of it boils down to convincing you. This is where it goes back to the mind state. You have to believe that things like that people in general, you specifically, but people in general, couldn't solve problems voluntarily, for example. That's why everybody uses the "what about building the roads" ridiculous excuse. This is like the number one meme-like excuse that people use about why taxation is necessary, is well, what about the roads? Who's going to build the roads? it's convincing people that human beings are so lacking in intelligence and creativity and in cooperation and all these abilities that we couldn't voluntarily solve these kinds of problems, advanced problems, when they're already being solved anyway. It's just they're being solved through violence and an imposition of solutions rather than voluntary. So once you start to lift the veil away and realize that not only can we solve the problems, but actually we can do voluntarily, we could do way better. Like people have no idea the level of, this is where the imagination comes in, because the level of solutions that we could apply voluntarily is millions, infinitely greater than what an imposed or a coercion-based solution is. So that's a very important point to understand, is that's how Patrick's gone, but what he said is a really good point, is the technology, the main thing that it's doing is it's getting into your mind this virus that makes you think that you're less valuable than you are, and that humanity as a whole, we don't have it within us to solve these problems, when in fact that is a complete lie.
Wow. Yeah, so we have another question. Will, go ahead before we get into
that. It's a great topic, and I'll just say real quick too. I mean, this is another unifying factor, is objective truth in the natural world, in what is real. And what David said is it's spot on, right? They want to atomize and degrade our knowledge of what we are and where we are and our capability and our potential, right? So if you diminish the imagination, you're just another cog in the another gear in the machine, and that's what they want to do. I think even defining words is extremely empowering and powerful to get a message out, right? Because you're getting meaning. Words have meaning, and you're taking it from an infinite potential down to a finite. You're defining it. So when I'm out in the field or talking with people that are completely unconscious to what's going on, and you use the word slavery, they immediately have their own mentally perceived definition. And 99% of the time, it's what they've been taught in school. And if you're in America, you're immediately going to think of civil rights, black slavery, and but the definition is what matters. What is it really? It's a claim of ownership upon another being. And this is powerful. And I would say covert slavery is absolutely more dangerous than overt. I think Mark touched on this a little bit, right? When it's overt, you can see it. It's right in front of you. It's brutal, but it's obvious. Covert gets into the realm of, how do you know you're under mind control? Right? Because here's the thing about free will. Free will has to be activated. What is potential is not actual. So how do you know you are making your free will choice, and you're not just running a program that's been instilled in you, or or you've been influenced? So they're deep questions. This is why what David was saying, it always comes back to the psychology of oneself, and we have to turn and ask ourselves the question in the mirror: what do I believe and why? So,
yeah, good questions. I mean, this is self-reflection. This is involving the individual, because as we said, it relies on our minds. There's many animations, guys, like, in case this is a little too complicated, like, we have animations, featured videos on each day. You can just scroll down each day. You'll see there's like some animations. There's one where an alien comes down to Earth and he's like, what is government? And it's really simplified, so you can see the perspective that we're sharing. There's been so many resources shared about this, and you mentioned truth. Logan Hart did a whole episode with me about what is truth. So I would recommend that to people who like the philosophy side of things and they want to study truth. What is truth, and how do we find it? How do we share it? That's day 15, everybody. Logan Hart. So how can we find secure social media to organize more unity? This is another question. Controllers have monopolized media channels, from news to social media to pop alternative media. Good groups are censored and canceled on Facebook, etc. So, all right, Aaron, do you want to start with this one? You're muted.
Can you read the beginning of that question again, real quick?
How can we find secure social media to organize more unity? I mean, the way I would approach it, yeah. I was just going to say. Build it.
I mean, we obviously be open to, in the How to Become the True Media seminar, Mark always discusses platform agnosticism, and it really shines a light on the mentality that humans need to develop, and it's, you know, be fluid in your ability to join other platforms, or to experiment with other platforms, and you know, rally the people who know how to build these platforms and know how to assemble them. You know, there's no platform that's just going to pop up and you know, take over Facebook or YouTube. It's, these things have to be grassroots and organized by people with the know-how and, you know, obviously the means, but, you know, you have to be able to resist the increasing heat of the algorithm to shut down any other options. It's like, you have to be able to play it to win it, instead of just thinking, oh well, Facebook or YouTube's the only thing we have. It's like, no, there should be, you know, millions of people talking about what these companies are doing, and at the end of the day, I think the answer is do it yourself. And we have to build these things ourselves, and sitting around and waiting for Elon to free Twitter and to give us our free speech back is just, it's so ridiculous. And yeah, I think it's simple enough as do it yourself, or be willing to invest your time into some platforms or social media that you know, are against censorship in deed and rather in word.
All right, you guys have anything to say about that?
Sure, I can chime in on that.
Yeah.
So I'll just share what I do and my approach, which I think is, well, let me just share it. So what I do is I want my videos to appear everywhere, and I am platform agnostic. So what I do is the following: I have my own website. I think each content creator should have their own website, at least one, which is kind of their own platform. Now, granted, in my case, it's just a simple website. I mean, I think it's getting better all the time as I keep working on it, but ultimately it's fairly simple. It's not sophisticated. So everything I do goes there. And I also share other people's stuff there as well. That's the first platform. And then I publish on about 16 other platforms, and so I'm completely agnostic. So of course I do publish on Facebook, I do publish on YouTube and Instagram and even LinkedIn and other platforms, but I also post on Minds, for example, which is a newer platform, which I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from my content there, surprisingly. And I post on other ones like Gab and MeWe and others where sometimes it's just crickets. You know, maybe it's getting some views. You know, sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. The point is that, you know, we have to worry less about a particular platform. I'll talk about the censorship part in a second, and I realize that that's also a part of it, like being censored. But just in terms of getting the content out, I think the most important thing is just push your content out to as many places as possible. Be very be agnostic to platforms, but be liberal in approaching more platforms. If it seems reasonable and worth it, you know, based on your best judgment, go ahead and post there. If it doesn't seem like it's a good use of your time, maybe don't post on that particular platform. Certainly the major platforms like Facebook, the big tech companies, they have very established audiences. So the benefit there is potentially huge reach, reaching a lot of people, including a lot of people who haven't even thought about a lot of these topics. So those are the people we really need. You know, obviously it's going to be important to reach people like that. So, I think a lot of people get very bent out of shape about the censorship. I understand it's an issue, and I understand, I mean, of course they're going to censor people. I mean, it makes sense. It's part of their strategy. That's why I'm never surprised when that happens. I've had relatively few of my own videos. Actually, I think I had one video taken down on YouTube, and a couple were flagged as 18 plus in more than a year of doing this. I don't think I've ever had anything taken down or gotten anything negative on Facebook. I think that's it, really. Just that one, you know, I think it was 2 strikes on YouTube, maybe, over a course of a year. So I think, I mean, it is obviously a concern. I'm not trying to belittle that, but I think you said it, Corey, a minute ago. You said play to win. Either you or Aaron said that. I'm sorry, and play to win. And I think that's exactly the point. Have a strategy to play to win. Don't play to lose. Don't play defensively on this. We've got to get the word out. That's the most important thing. I mean, you know, the most important thing that we're doing is sharing the message. So what I share with you guys is just, I think, what works best. If there might even be a better way to do it, but I mean, for me, this has really worked really well, and that's what I continue to do.
Yeah, Will.
Yeah, you know, being illiterate in the 21st century means that you're a technological Luddite, right? If you don't, you have to understand tech. And that's scary for a lot of people, but especially if you're going to, fight for freedom and speak the truth and come out publicly, which I think everyone should. Use your real name, show your face. I live by the phrase, speak the truth even if it leads to your death, because it's the right thing to do. Right action. That is righteousness for sure. So I think the question might have been directed to community-based. I share the same thought process as David. I want to get my content on as many platforms as possible, because ultimately I'm trying to influence and inspire people that aren't waking up, the unconscious masses, right? So I want to be on these mainstream social media platforms, etc., right? And lead them to my website, understanding that you can create a website that has a lot more security and protection than just, having a standard, WordPress or GoDaddy. And, those are fine, but who knows? They can be taken down, maybe possibly at some point in the future. But understanding how the tech works in a general aspect and increasing your awareness and your skill set, right? That's a good way to do it. As far as security when coming to communities, I mean, there are some better platforms out there like Guilded or Telegram, and you just speak the truth. You meet up, you act, and right. Ultimately, if you're trying to start a community or something, face to face is the best way to do it. So make your plans fearlessly.
Right. Well, if you guys signed up for the summit, you'll see on day 16, there is a bunch of resources, including alternatives to Google. So if you have any Google program out there, there's a list, there's always an alternative to it. Just keep that in mind, right? And the thing is you can use those alternatives within your personal life. Now, when it comes to interacting with others, I totally agree with you guys. Let's get involved in the other platforms. Read their guidelines, though, because they are pretty explicit as to what they want and what they do not want. Now, they may not tell you everything. Sometimes they're really baseless and don't really tell you anything, and they'll just ban you for no reason. But most of the time, they have a pretty solid reason. Like, you're talking about COVID, you're talking about 9/11, you're talking about... There's certain issues you cannot talk about. I know what they are because I've been on the internet for a while to observe it. Okay, but if you talk about philosophy and these ideas, you're not really going to get censored unless you're showing really bad imagery. So use the opportunity while you can to share these simple moral truths, because morality is not that controversial. If we're just saying do not violently impose your will on another because that's slavery, or do not claim ownership over something that does not belong to you because that's slavery, it's a really simple concept. I'm sure many of the employees there would also agree with it. The problem is some of them are probably just order followers, and they're just going to do what they're told to. So the thing is, right, is we're getting rid of that mentality of order following, because that's what makes people enslave themselves. But just understand that that's always going to happen in many different spaces. The problem is, is so many people willing to comply with that and willing to sit there. So notice how you find out about these alternative platforms in the first place. You probably found out through Facebook, through Twitter, through YouTube. I bet you 100% guaranteed that BitChute and Brighteon and all these alternatives got most of their fan base from content creators on those mainstream platforms that brought them over. So it's important that we can do that. We can use the main platforms and then show people the alternatives, and then people can choose what they want to do.
Real quick,
the best will rise to the top.
I just want to say just real quick, I think there's a lot of consolidation going on, right? It's like people are talking about the effects. They're talking about the current dialectics. That's easy for them to pinpoint, censor, move people, and consolidate them on certain platforms. The main message, you have to get down to causal factors. It has to be mindset and action, right? Talking about objective morality, the difference between right and wrong. This is the body of information that we need to talk about. The next deception that's going on, they love it when people do that, because then they can apply the censorship, and what that does to people, they think, oh, there's something there, and they focus their attention there and their focus, right? It's entrainment, it's perception management for behavior control, but there is no change in the effects. So just wanted to add that.
No, you're right. And people, I mean, people can get into polarities themselves through conversation if they're not open enough to see the bigger picture. You know, when it comes to, like, I see in the chat right now, some of you guys are talking about natural law and this scenario and that scenario. It's like all these complex details. And it's like, I think that's great. That's good conversation, as long as no one's using violence to impose their will. Again, it's not slavery. So it's like, that is the main point of the summit. It's like, let's have the discussion. Let's bring it into the world. Let's not just keep it within ourselves and within our communities. Let's bring it to the world. There's a whole world of people out there who won't even care about what is right and wrong, because they'll suppress it for what is being told of them what to do. I'm sorry, World War II, like, you know, Jesus being burned on the cross, and like a billion other examples throughout history of the crowd and the masses cheering on the slaughter of their fellow man. I mean, it's nonsense. That is not much to do about objective morality. Much more to do with individuals just ignoring morality, all morality. You know, like, no sense of morality. And that is what makes us no longer human. That's what makes us no longer, you know, a free people, a caring people. So this is just about simple, you know, basic ideas. And I don't think it takes a genius to figure out, like, you own you, I own me. You know, we have boundaries. It's like, but we cross that on a day-to-day basis, and there's this invisible violence that we don't always see being done to our fellow men, because, you know, we have this system in place where people think that they're more special just because of a uniform or a piece of paper has some magical powers. So I just wanted to reiterate again. I'm gonna do that many times. I'm gonna
step away just for 1 second, Corey.
Sure. We have another question here: how to spread truth and try to survive, or make money to survive at the same time? How to spread truth and try to survive, or make money to survive at the same time? Well, I think you could keep living your day-to-day life and still share truth. Am I wrong, guys?
For sure.
Okay.
I have a 9 to 5. I have a 9 to 5 for sure. You know, I would love to create content and spread awareness full time, right? And get some kind of some gratitude. It's an exchange of energy. You know, people find value in the creation that I make. I'm not selling the knowledge. The knowledge is available for everyone, but the attention and the creativity that I put into a presentation or videos, etc., right? That's what someone is paying for. That, you know, that they like my flavor of creativity, and there's many methods that one can go about doing that, right? And I think it's very unique and personalized for everyone. So the only time I really have a problem is when someone's like, you got to pay for something before I tell you it. Before I tell you the knowledge, right? Then you're you're trying to hustle. It's not a right thing to do.
Yeah.
Ethical.
I agree.
So, but you know,
Absolutely.
products, services, I'll let you go, David.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo a lot of what Will is saying. Similar, I'm in a similar position. I really would love to be in a position to just focus on creating this content, both because, I mean, it's an act of love. It's an act of love. It's a labor of love, and I enjoy it very much, even though it is something that is also necessary. And, you know, it would be great if we didn't have to do all this. If it would be great, obviously, it would be wonderful if we already lived in that free world. But this is the right thing to do, and so I've always approached it of just a labor of love. I mean, I sleep well at night knowing that I'm doing that. Would I love to be doing it more? And do I have to sustain myself? Of course, like all of us, this is just the nature of reality. So in my case, obviously everybody's different. In my case, the way I sustain myself is I'm always traveling. So I don't really have a permanent home at the moment. And I work specifically with hotels and hostels. I've designed a lifestyle where I work directly with the owners of hotels and hostels to help them improve the experience of the hotel and hostel using all my different skill sets, which are a wide range. And it's a great situation because it's a client-vendor relationship. So I'm not looked at as an employee, so I don't necessarily have to maintain a very specific hours. It's really more about the results that I give them. And so it does leave me a lot of time and flexibility in my case to work on the content. I'm not paid a lot. You know, I'm in Central America right now. The pays are even for a vendor are not high. I'm not really in it to make, you know, I'm not trying to charge really high fees just to do that. I'm focused more on sustainability and growth and keep going. But it's enough. It's enough for me to, they always offer me a place to stay. I always have a bed. I have, in this case, a private room to myself, which is great. I always have enough to buy the food that I need, and incidentals that I need, and a little bit left over usually to pay the bills, pay the stuff that I use to create the content. It would be great to get more donations, more this and that. And I'm always asking for that. I mean, I'm always putting that out there. I don't like make it the focus. But obviously I put it out there that, that it'd be great to receive donations. I have received some. I think that's great. People who have donated. Maybe perhaps as I continue doing this and others, perhaps as more people value this content, people will start to donate or sponsor. I also say you can sponsor my videos. JP Sears, Awakening with JP, I know he does that a lot. A lot of these content creators who are also talking about truth and freedom, who maybe are at a higher level, they have different ways to monetize. So I think that's perfectly acceptable as long as it's moral and you're not compromising, the core principles, the core message. I don't plan to ever charge for the core content, but maybe if people want to pay a subscription, they'll get access to something a little extra, right? Or they can hire me to do some consulting or help them set up something. That's I think is a perfectly acceptable and perfectly moral and reasonable and even a good way to earn some income. But not like Will was saying, I agree completely. We're not charging for the actual knowledge. We're not charging for imparting this important information. We're not going to withhold that and make it scarce, falsely scarce. That's always going to be front and center. But yes, I mean, be creative, find different ways to earn some income and then just keep going.
Yeah. You guys made a lot of great points. I'm not sure if, Will, you wanted to make another point about that.
Yeah, one way to look at it too, right? I mean, if we look at the controllers, the social engineers, they have unlimited resources. They're printing it up in the air. It doesn't matter, right? So it's the money itself just represents something. And in this matrix that we're operating in, it represents resources. So in my earlier years, I was very anti-money, but I'm going to reach out and say, anyone that follows a certain type of content creator, make a donation if you can. If you got it, I think we need a lot more support. The people that are putting their time and attention in and creating content and getting the message of freedom out, I think they should ask for donations. Absolutely put that out in the ether.
I'm not.
And people should donate as well. I think that's great. You said you're not going to?
No, I'm not. It's just my personal belief. Yeah.
Sure.
So somebody in the chat and Twitch chat said too, I'm like in it for the money or something. I'm like, bro, I have no way I'm making money off of the summit. I'm actually losing money for putting it up. So, and I'm also mailing things to people overseas as well and for free. So that's also like probably the biggest expense. but yeah, I just figured to mention that, you guys. Like I'm doing it.
People don't understand.
Yeah, I'm doing it
purely
money
that we spend as content creators, right? I mean, there's streaming subscriptions. I mean, tech. All kinds of stuff. So, and I think we all get that as content creators. Oh, you're in it for the money. I mean, I've done a couple conferences. I've gotten the same thing. And no, we lost money doing it, but we're trying to spread truth and freedom. So, I'll spend my dime on it.
And that honestly is the best currency you can get, because honestly we are making more of an impact. If I can just help influence one person, I mean that's beautiful, to help them see like, wow, their own belief system is contradicting themselves. Like there's some debate in the chat and I love seeing it. You guys are like, oh, this person's a more relativist, oh, this person wants harm. It's like, all you got to ask is the simple question is, if you don't think harm is a bad thing, would you want harm done unto you? Reply everything that you say out of your own mouth reciprocally back to you and see how it feels. That right there is actually Patrick Smith's definition of rights as well, by the way. And there's nothing wrong with it. He says a right is a reciprocal agreement, because if somebody doesn't respect your rights, they're not going to even care about your rights to begin with. So, this is another way to look at it, is it has to be reciprocal. And we see in nature, justice has to be reciprocal as such. Of course, there is the idea of there's truth and there's reality and then there's people's opinions, and, they're two separate things, but I think that ties into it, of course, as well. But it's all semantics. The point is like, can you understand what slavery is? Can you understand that, you don't own someone else's time, energy, labor, something that they worked for, something that like their work, sweat, and tears? I mean, my gosh, we're being taxed like a third of our income almost. I mean, in some places of the world, it's more than that. I mean, you're talking people are working for months free, You know, if you're taxed 30% of your week, like of 10 days, you're basically working 3 days for free. I mean, this is insane. That is free labor. That is slavery. And so it doesn't matter if it's 100% of the fruits of your labor is being taken from you. What percentage does it not become slavery? Right? This is the question. Somebody else asked that in the chat. Great question. Great question. Guys, so...
Yeah, the rapist thinks that he's making love to the victim, right? It's his perception. He's not causing any harm. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, you're right. At some point in time, you have to realize it's like there is a truth. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeking it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having goals and all these philosophies trying to attain it. And, you know, a good resource for people when it comes to this is, again, Logan Hart's Truth, Your Talk on conscious parenting, because it all starts when we grow up. You know, I think a lot of us just don't have that strong foundation, and even we're still trying to figure it out to this day because we lack that strong roots from our beginning childhood. It's insane, right? What can be done to us? We're maybe injected right the minute we come out of the womb. I mean, gosh. I mean, who knows what potential could have been there if we did not do such a invasive procedure, or we let things naturally happen, more so. So guys, we have a lot of questions. I want to make it a little bit more simple, if you guys don't mind. I want to keep our answers like maybe within like a quick sentence. Try to like sum up your answers, if that's okay, because I just want to make sure we catch up to the chat. And there's a lot of great questions being asked.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Let's go. What are y'all's thoughts on... oh, and by the way, to the last question, I didn't really answer it. My one sentence answer is the next project. Okay, Cecil, if you're still watching, if you want to share the truth and you want to make money at the same time, you're not going to make money doing this, although I will share your donation links for you. If you send me articles, if you write anything, doesn't matter what length it is, I will turn it into videos for you and promote you and your content. This is the next project, guys. I want you to check it out. Nita.one/newspaper is the website currently. There's going to be another website for it in the future, but look into it. It's on day 16. It's one of the top resources. I mentioned it a few times, but this is the next goal for us is getting everybody involved. So no matter what job you're doing, no matter how much time you have, you can always just write a little bit per day, and then over time that amasses, and you can take your time no matter what, and eventually you can put out something. So just figured to put that out there. It's a helpful tool. What are y'all's thoughts on joining communities like Freedom Cells, or what could be done to improve such communities or to establish your own? So I'll read that one more time, and again, we'll keep our answers short from now on. What are y'all's thoughts on joining communities like Freedom Cells, or what could be done to improve such communities or to establish your own? Aaron, what are your thoughts? Yes or no, and what would you do to improve it?
Yes, join communities, and what could be done to improve it is... I mean, I think definitely just join the communities. That can be get involved with these communities. You know, don't just be a passive, you know, person who joins these things. It's like actually get involved, try to bring something of value to them, and that's probably the best way to help.
All right, David.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. I mean, I do like what Derek and his team is doing with Freedom Cells. I think specifically, I don't know if they were asking specifically about that project, but I think it's a good project and it's worth investigating. I've been reading one of his books, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, I think it's called. And but I think communities, you know, small local communities where you're actually interacting with people in the real world, not just online, are going to have value, whether it's through Freedom Cells specifically or just something you create organically under your own name. I would say, yes, do whatever you can, because the people that are closest to you, because you're spending time together, you know, when you're able to collaborate, the potential to create great things is much stronger. And it's also fortifying, it's satisfying. It's part of the human experience to have these, to be a part of a community. So when we can maximize that effort within the communities that we have, yes, I would say, do what you can. You know, make it happen.
All right. Will, you guys can just go right after each other. Don't worry about me.
We got the format. Yes and no. I'm part of a local community and an online community, and I'll tell you some of the factors real quick. We all need connection. I mean, someone might not want connection, but the majority of people, they do need interaction and connection, especially in the quote unquote, you know, truth-seeking freedom community, right? We want to conversate and connect with like minds. So that's a huge plus. But also keep in mind that the overall goal or message of the group, that's what is important, right? Are they creating action, or is it based on escapism, or, you know, what that is? Make sure that's clear. My point being, time management and energy management is vital for each individual person. So be conscious of what you invest in.
All right. Awesome. Hope that answers your question, Active Research. You could always share your thoughts with us as well. I do think you can always bring more materials into those communities. That would be my answer to it, is integrate your ideas within those communities. And I agree with you guys. Pretty much same deal. All right, next question here. Do you think that the U.S. is sort of too far gone or not too far from it? And what are they referring to? I probably lean more to being pessimistic. Do you think that the U.S. is sort of too far gone or not far from it? So like pessimistic as in like worried about the world, right? Am I correct, guys? Like pessimistic meaning you're like in fear of what's going to, well, you're not, well, you're kind of in fear, but you doubt things are going to work out in a sense.
I have to fight off those you know, inclinations too, but I think that's probably just you know, maybe my trauma or my awakening process was just super dark and pessimistic, but I think the US is going to be you know, one of the last dominoes to fall if it is going in that direction. Otherwise, I don't think that, you know, the US is too far gone. I hold out hope, and I think that, you know, if more people get involved, then that's definitely the primary goal.
We have the firearms, right? What do you guys think?
Right. So it's really hard to pronounce an assessment on an entire country with hundreds of millions of people without just doing a little bit of slicing. But I think just looking at how things are in the entire world is how I tend to look at it. Realistically, we're really back up against the wall. We're backed up against the wall. So it's not completely over. We haven't completely lost. If the battle is over the human soul, if the battle is over our freedom, ultimately, we haven't completely lost, but it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And I would just make that assessment in terms of the whole world. But like I said, being realistic, you know, we still have a shot at digging ourselves out of the hole before we completely fall over the precipice. So I think that's the important thing, is to be realistic and not be delusional about, you know, what's really going on, and just keep pressing forward, keep pressing forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Aaron and David for sure. You got to be real. You got to be grounded in what's going on. Sure, America there is an advantage, right? Because we have our guns, we have our weapons. That's good compared to, like, you know, Australia or other countries. But on the aggregate level, we don't have the numbers whatsoever. There is absolutely no great awakening, but there is a great awareness. I say this, and for me, that's opportunity. There's no better time than now to get involved and speak out. So,
right, awesome. Astro, I know you're new here and you're asking a lot of questions. You seem very curious. I love it. I love people who love to learn new things, and it's totally okay. And I know, you know, there's a whole chat going on, so many different conversations at the same time, but it might be a little bit confusing at first. I would recommend, that's why you have day one. You can start from the very beginning, and or just check out one of like the featured resources and just like sit down and read a book, like one of the books that we provide for free, because that's a good way to start too. You know what I mean? Like on a way that's nice and organized, and you have all the answers sort of there before you. Because, you know, if we go in this live stream and we start talking about some of the fundamental ideas again, we're going to be repeating a lot of the points we made previously, and I'm okay with that. But he asked, you know, you're comparing being a citizen of a country or a nation to actual slavery. And the answer to that is yes. Because unless you are truly sovereign in the sense of super reign, above rulership, you rule yourself, who's ruling over you? And what gives them that right? If you don't want to, does that make you a slave? Because I never consented. I personally never, you know, signed any contract to be within their system, to be taxed against my will, to comply to certain laws that I personally did not consent to or create myself. So do you think, Astro, violence would be justified against me? You know, and these are questions, of course, I would ask to someone in real life. It's kind of hard because I'm through online. This is why I don't usually talk about online with people, and also in front of audiences. It can get very distracting. So the best thing you can do is sit down with yourself, ask yourself the questions, and reflect through the material. Hopefully I answered that for you. And so let's see here. Next question. Slavery is when a person makes a claim to the fruits of another person's labor, whether it be 100% or 20%. Ask yourself, at which point does it become something other than slavery, right? That's the point I made before. And again, Frederick Douglass says this in his own biography, so if you think I'm wrong, you can watch my video I made about that. It's another featured video during the summit. Here we see another question here. Does anyone have a natural right to own intellectual property like copyright, patent, and trademark without government? That's a good question. Here, I'll let you guys do that one. Will, do you want to start this time? We'll go reverse order. Just to keep it fair. I don't know, somewhat fair. Different. I'm gonna get water. Okay, you guys discuss this. I'm gonna get water. I'm thirsty.
No, you can't. You can't with intellectual property. I mean, if you create some content, like let's say I turn it into a documentary and you want to steal the documentary, but even then you put it out in the public domain, it's available for the public, right? So I mean, that's my short answer.
Yeah, I agree with Will on that. And something like intellectual rights or property rights is it's very vague because, you know, it's something that's not quite manifest. I mean, it's like trademarking a sentence and you're the only person allowed to say that sentence, or I mean, I guess certain people, you know, they try to copyright words or phrases, but at the end of the day, anyone could use that phrase, and no one has the right to tell someone what they can't do with that. I mean, especially if you're putting it out into the open, you know. I mean, even with someone who is an inventor and they have an invention, you know, and two people across the whole entire planet turn in the same blueprints or schematics, you know, almost the same exact time, you know, that's happened in history, and it's who can say that, you know, which one owns the rights to that intellectual property. It's something that's you know, it's always going to be going on, and I don't think that anyone owns, you know, intellectual property.
Yeah. Where did David go? Disappeared?
Yeah.
He's back. Okay.
He's back.
I'll bring him back. Here we go. There's David.
It out for some reason.
All good.
Do I have a chance to answer that last question, or
please.
Okay, I'm not sure where you guys. I literally just got booted. Okay, this will probably be very similar, maybe, to what Will and Aaron were saying. I think I actually thought about this. It's an interesting question because I literally have on my list of topics to tackle this very question. So I think it's great that someone asked that. I think it shows good thinking. My thinking about it is what is rightful possession? What is rightful property? Can one rightfully say that they claim an ownership to information or knowledge, which is really what intellectual property rights are, as I understand it, is you're claiming an ownership over knowledge. And I don't think you can. I think you can claim ownership over a process or an implementation of something that is based on knowledge, but knowledge and information itself, especially as someone was saying, you know, when you put it out in the public domain, it's already out there. So I think, you know, the way I look at it is authorities in general, if you want to use that general term, one of the ways that they use to impose their control is the claim of intellectual property, because it allows them to create false scarcity. It allows them to create a claim where now if somebody supposedly infringes on that, now they can run a lawsuit because there are patents and copyrights and trademarks and so forth. But this is all, again, based on, I think, moral relativism. It's all based on man's law. It's not really based in truth. The truth is that there is property. There's something you actually physically own. You control it. You obtained it rightfully. You're controlling its usage, and you're responsible for how it's used. And that's rightful possession. And knowledge and information does not fall under that purvey. It's open. Knowledge is available to everyone. And obviously, the work products that we create are the results of using and applying that knowledge.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm going to go to the next question, if that's okay. Hopefully that answers the question. From my view on that, I agree with you guys. Basically, nothing too crazy. If you're living in a free world, I mean, the question is, and ask yourself now, would you use violence to make someone stop redistributing your work? I mean, you know, you feel like, man, this is my work, I want to keep it for myself. I mean, you got to think about why you created that work, right? Like, usually people patent books. I had to patent my book. I felt I had no choice, because if I didn't, someone can patent it and prevent me with violence from distributing my own book. So I basically have no choice but to do it. And Larkin Rose and a lot of the same people, because we're in the system, we have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to use the force of law for their own benefit. Against our own will, even though it's our own created work. So even us, as people who like our own work and want to share it, like, we have no choice but to do it. That's where slavery comes in, is where you have no choice. Okay, so it's not that it's a bad idea of like, yeah, I want to protect my property, yeah. But it's like, this is property you're planning to distribute to the whole world and online. It's bound to get shared by people. It's basically bound to get leaked. And you see there's like pirated websites, like billions of them on the internet. To some extent, you have to like accept that. And that's what freedom is. That's what the internet is. That's why it's so beautiful. And that's why people who do deceive others want to keep their knowledge hidden from the rest of the people, because knowledge is power. So we do need open communication. It doesn't mean people can't get money from their works, because people are very charitable. We see this in GoFundMe campaigns and such. People can still gain money from what they have and what they create. So why is it that they need to use violence to protect their works? You know, like what more are they asking for here, other than everybody to comply to what they want? I mean, that would be slavery. So I would say, yeah, it's too artificial. Just, you know, humans trying to control everybody else and their actions. Like, people are going to freely share something if they think it's important. We are going to speak to let's see. By the way, I'm here with those of you who don't know, David Greenberg, Aaron Butler, and Will Keller. These are speakers from the End of Slavery Summit. You can see their full talks. Will talks about conscious parenting. David talks about trauma, unresolved trauma, to be more specific, and how that contributes to slavery. Aaron is my co-host for the summit. He helped with a bunch of things. Thank you, Aaron. Is it better to have some laws and rules, or act like there are no laws or rules or consequences for your actions, both positive and negative? Act like there's no laws or rules or consequences to your actions, both positive and negative. This is obviously a big question. How can a society function without some laws and rules? Some laws. Well, there's always going to be rules, but I mean, you guys want to answer this?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first defining what a law is, right? The definition of law means immutable, a condition that is immutable and unchanging, right? That's the real definition of law. So yes, absolutely. There's always going to be rules in this reality that we exist in, and that is natural law, right? These are the laws of nature. Cosmic law. Cosmic means order. This is the ordering, the rules. And we talked about even some of the principles of self-ownership, non-aggression, self-defense. These are the principles that humanity must understand, right? And just based on those three principles alone, we can already cooperate and organize a lot better than we are today, right? Because now we're at par. Now we understand the fundamentals, the elements, the elementary, and this is ultimately what we're trying to gain is, you know, the solution is higher awareness. So once we get there, then the potential to organize, work together, and create is unlimited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
very well said.
Yeah. Very well said. And you know, the great thing about it is that all of these laws are already in place. All the laws that we need are already in place. And, you know, alluding to what Will said is that we don't need more laws. We just need awareness of the ones that are already here. And it takes you to be able to hearken to those and to become aware of the laws that are already in place, that have been in place, that are immutable, that cannot change or fluctuate.
Yeah, I like the distinction that Jeremy Locke made in his book, The End of All Evil, where he talks about the difference between law and principle. Now, obviously, we use the term law also to refer to natural law, but a way to think of it is that in nature, there are certain principles that you can either learn how they work and harmonize with them, or you can try to ignore them and fight them and suffer as a result of that. Whereas all man-made laws, or what Jeremy referred to as law in his book, is basically authority coming along and saying, you've got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that. So it's that imposing in your mind to think that we need laws. Like, that's basically the mental construct that authority wants people to believe, is that we need laws. We need, even per the question, we needed some laws, because otherwise what would happen? But the point is, as Will was saying, as Eric was saying, as many of the educators have been saying, but the laws already exist. The principles already exist. They're already built into the fabric of reality. They're there to discover. We didn't have to create gravity. We didn't have to create thermodynamics. These things already existed. So it's not much of a stretch to realize that there are laws of cause and effect that give us the outcomes based on what we choose to do. So that's the beautiful thing about it. We don't need any more laws. They're already there. What we do need to do, however, and this is the great part of the important work that everybody needs to do, is to discover those laws, to learn about them, to understand them to the best of their ability, and then determine how to best use and apply those laws in their own day-to-day life, both within their own personal realm, but also when interacting with the world as a whole.
Awesome. Yeah, and another thing that was mentioned is 1 in 100 people is said to be a sociopath, and they don't have any sense of right and wrong. So how would you prevent those people from harming society? So something I would say to this very quickly is, they're just one person. They don't need to be given the power over everybody else. There's always going to be evil people, evil doers, and some of them are going to completely ignore these ideas of natural law or self-ownership. The point is that they can't gain power without people's consent of saying these people have the right, the imagined right, to rule over us, to tell us what to do with our life and property. So that goes back to what the other question was saying. We don't even need to take the natural law perspective of it. I mean, frankly, you can make the rules for your own business, your own community online space. People voluntarily choose if they want to participate in that business or not. As long as you respect other businesses and other people who are doing their own thing too, and the fact that they have rules of their own, and you respect that, and you don't say, no, my rules are the only rules, then you got an equal world, a world where you don't have slavery. So again, whether you want to take the natural law perspective or not, you're still recognizing inherent equality or reciprocal justice within the humankind. So, there's many different ways.
Psychological. Yep. Sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think what's interesting when people bring up the fact that 1 in 100 people are psychopaths or sociopaths, and that's always been a really enlightening topic to me, because 1 in people sure are the blood-born, they're born into this world with no conscience. However, I think that the secondary or type 2 psychopath is way more rampant and way more infectious in our world that we're living in, and I think it's probably up to the 25% mark. And the one thing that I did learn about this is that, what we're talking about is conscience. And that's what psychopaths lack, is a true conscience. And now what's interesting is that just because they're lacking in conscience, or let's say someone is a full-blown, psychopath, and they don't have conscience, which actually means common sense. It's the one unifying, sense that all humans have. It's common sense, and that's why when we go to sleep at night, it's, was this right or that right, or wrong morally, or was this immoral or moral? And it's basically common sense, is that people intrinsically know these things. And now the psychopath, someone who we think has none of this awareness, they still do math. They still know, what I call it is cosmic or karmic math. It doesn't mean that they feel or have an intrinsic awareness of what right and wrong is, but they do know that certain behaviors lead to evolution, lead to creation, lead to life. And then certain behaviors lead to involution, certain behaviors lead to death and lead to decay. And that's what that is that, sure, you know, so many people, I think, are probably suffering or have this, you know, secondary psychopathy, but we can all do that cosmic math and do that karmic math. And is this behavior going to lead to a long, evolution? Will this lead to evolution or involution? And I think even psychopaths are aware of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and self-defense, going back to that principle, is not just physical self-defense. So of course, when we think about self-defense, the natural image is pulling some taekwondo or pulling out a firearm, and those are of course completely valid forms of self-defense under the right conditions. But I would argue, from my own experience, that the vast majority of situations and ways in which we need to defend ourselves is actually defending our mind. This is the major, defending our mind, our psychology. And a lot of the manipulation, not just in the global scale, not just from the social engineers, but even people that you'll run into in your own life. I've seen this over and over again. You're going to run into master manipulators. And, you know, let's say that 1 out of 100 people is born a psychopath. Well, you're going to run into some of those people from time to time. And you're going to need to know how to defend your mind and your psychology and perhaps your physical body in those situations. So I think, you know, to answer that question in a more of a just a concise way, is the entirety of self-defense, which includes defending your entire being, your mind, body, and spirit, is how you deal with because all you can really do is act as yourself, how you deal with these people. And, you know, they exist. I mean, they were born, they're there. Whether or not, if they try to harm you or others, all you can really do is defend yourself in that situation. And that is the correct thing to do.
Will, if you have anything to say, otherwise I can continue with other questions.
Yeah, well said, both you guys. That was awesome. To say that we need more regulations, more, you know, man's law, it's like, man, we got to reach spiritual adulthood, right? I mean, that's what you do with like children that don't have a sense of the world and, you know, don't have logic and reason activated. It's like, oh, we got to tell you how to act. You know, so we need to step outside of that. And that comes from, you know, one of the primal fears of death, that we have to be safe and we need safety and just tell me how to live so I'll be safe type of mentality. And ultimately, yeah, it all comes back down to what my topic was, which is parenting, right? The psychological transference that we are passing down to our kids, and the cycle keeps continuing. But at some point, what our mission and our goal is to grow up spiritually.
And we can help others in that process, and that's what we're doing here. So, you know, and it's not an easy process. As you can see, there's going to be people who, you know, shut it down at first, or they don't really understand a lot of the concepts, or they just they don't want to hear it, or they've never heard it before. So it's really new, it's scary. They're going to get reactions of all different kinds, depending on where an individual is within their life, as David has said. You know, and there's going to be so many different factors, but it doesn't, you know, delegitimize the fact that it is possible to live free. It is totally possible to be in a voluntary world. I mean, look around you and ask yourself, is there violence needed for this, violence needed for that? Most people, as far as I'm concerned, can self-organize. I go to farmers markets all the time. I go to different places, and people are doing things because they have a demand. There's going to be a supply, and there's going to be people who are willing to do that. You know, just as people are pretty charitable. We may want to say, oh, look at this one bad guy, or oh, what about this potential wrong thing? But that does not justify stealing from everybody, guaranteed, for the possibility of one person doing something bad. It's like, you know, every single year they're going to be taking money from your account, guaranteed. But you don't know every single year you're going to get stolen from some random person on the street of like the hundreds of people you pass every single day. But yet you're going to still say the government is what's keeping you safe, when they're the ones violating you more than a criminal ever would. And a criminal would also be honest. They'd take your stuff, leave. They wouldn't claim to say, oh, I get to take your stuff every so now and then, and everybody sees me as moral. Everybody agrees you have to follow orders. Totally different scenario. Anyways, I could go on a rant. So, was Candles in the Dark highlighted in the summit? I rub people the wrong way, so I need to get all the help I can get. Yeah, this is also why I made my book Radical Honesty, because it all comes down to honesty, in my view. And the part people ask, think about this. This is on a psychological level. How could I be honest without being offensive? Sounds a lot like today's world, when people are very intolerant or they don't want to hear something that could be potentially truthful or against their current ideas. And, well, how did you get honest with yourself? You asked questions. If you ask questions to yourself, you should ask questions to other people. So the method is asking questions, and in Candles in the Dark, Larkin teaches people how to ask questions, frankly, which is something that we all can do and we've done with ourselves. I say every thought is a question, but it is one of the resources, Shine. On day 16, just look at all the action resources. Candles in the Dark is there. So be sure to check it out. I think everybody would gain a lot of value from it, because I see, again, I was sort of, you saw me in this chat, guys, like I was sort of deciphering, like, no, we don't need to use the natural law perspective. No, we don't have to use just one perspective. We don't need to be stuck on one way of treating things. And that is just important. As a coach, and David, you're a coach too, it's like we want to bring the truth out of an individual. We don't want to necessarily tell them what to do. And so part of that process has to be asking questions and connecting. And so like Astro, I wouldn't be, surprised if he got overwhelmed in the chat, because there was a bunch of people like saying this is that and this is that, because he caused a whole debate. And I think that's beautiful to see, but it can be overwhelming for somebody. So guys, keep that in mind when you talk to people who are new to a lot of this. Let this be a demonstration. You don't want to go too crazy. You want to be careful. So anyways, so next question. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. And you guys, by the way, we've been going on for about 2 hours now, well, actually an hour and a half. You guys can leave anytime you want. I want to make sure I answer everything that's put in the chat. To the best of my knowledge.
I actually want to say something about Astro, that
sure.
Whoever was in the chat, and I see this is really common. People will step into, let's say, a new scene, a new place, like he came into here, not knowing pretty much any of the information or not aware of what the summit is about,
right?
But yet he still pushed his own ideology. Now, there's a difference. If I'm walking fresh into a scene where I don't know what is going on, I'm curious about the information talked about, and then I can take it in and entertain it a little bit and process it. So I see this pattern with a lot of people, and I'm not trying to ruffle his feathers, but I'm trying to actually motivate him to take a step back and maybe go and take in the whole summit, take in some of the resource material, and actually get an understanding of what he walked into. Right, so something that I've noticed.
All good. All right, let's see here. I'm looking for other questions. There's a lot to sort through here. Here we go. I also have questions for you guys in general, and you guys can answer these while I look for other ones, and you guys can also think of other questions as well in the chat. These are very simple questions, because I thought they'd be perfect for a group. So, name one action that you think people should do. And obviously it can't be something that someone else said. Aaron, go. I know, look at his reaction. He's like, oh, come on.
Look in the mirror. Look in your mirror.
Wow.
Have something to know yourself. Learn what you are. Learn the truth about what you are.
David?
Create more videos. Start where you are right now. Stop making excuses. Just create videos. Share what you already know, and then keep evolving as you're creating content.
Will.
Speak. I think a lot of people bite their tongues. And every time you do that, it calcifies your very being a little bit at a time. And the more times you bite your tongue, especially when it comes to an injustice or even how you feel, right? Then it starts to kind of numb you. And this is where I think a lot of people need to take some consideration, is to speak out. Use the voice on how you feel, what you see, what you're experiencing, and the truth. So, because that's action, right? Yeah. Act, ion, performed energy.
And it's better to speak something out poorly than to not at all.
Ooh.
Exactly. There's no stupid questions except the ones that just weren't asked, right?
Yeah.
So
in my
I had an
questions.
example that came up today where I was negotiating with the hotel owner here, and where there was like this misunderstanding that kept happening. And finally, I just sat down with him and I said, "Hey, I need to have a direct talk with you." And we just talked it all out. And all of a sudden, he shared with me a lot more context about his situation, which I, being a being who has that capacity to understand other, that compassion, I was like, oh, now this all makes sense. And that simple act of communicating, of speaking and listening both, and having a real conversation, we were able to solve a whole bunch of things, and it literally made everything better and allowed us to move forward.
Yeah, with communication, you commune, meaning you come together and you connect on an issue or whatever it is. So I mean, it's really important, communication, and obviously comprehension as well. Comprehension on both sides, the person that is communicating and the person that is receiving as well. So that's cool.
Here we have a question. Let me read this first because it talks about a bunch of things. Dujin, I'm kind of confused by your question. I mean, you guys can see that in the chat, right? I don't know. I'm confused what's being asked with that. If you guys see that on your end.
Which personal properties are involved in adultery and marriage, public nudity, and legal age of consent?
Personal properties. Okay, so we would be breaking it down, in a sense. Do you want to answer that, Ryan? Go ahead.
I'll do my best.
Hey, these are good questions.
Which personal properties are involved in adultery and marriage, public nudity, and legal age of consent? So I guess personal property and marriage, because no one is your property, I would just say that if you're lying to someone, you're stealing your partner's ability to have, honest or have the full information about who their sexual partner is and who they're involved in. So I mean, you're obviously potentially putting someone at risk. You're stealing information. As I think we talked about, is that the truth is, the truth should be everyone's to know, and it shouldn't just be yours to know or to keep to yourself. Public nudity, very interesting. I think that in public places you're at risk to see things, and it's not like anyone, no one is there to protect you but yourself. I mean, a legal age of consent, obviously, someone who is a mature grown adult and has the ability to make decisions for themselves and isn't reliant on someone with more experience, and isn't someone who can make proper decisions for themselves, like a grown-up, someone with fully formed neocortex who actually has the physical ability to decide for themselves with the proper knowledge.
Hey, Active Research, don't make fun of Aaron. He's my co-host. I know who he is. Anyways, yeah, no, you're right. So the thing is, right, I mean, people can do whatever they want as long as they don't violate others, but it doesn't mean that people are not going to judge you, and it doesn't mean that people are not going to perceive you in different ways. That's just how it goes. So if you're wearing something that someone else doesn't like, they're probably going to be honest with you and tell you they don't like it. And you're probably not going to be perceived a certain way, and you're going to have to discern and find out if it's actually something that you probably shouldn't do. But maybe you want to say, I want to normalize it. Like a lot of nowadays, people are like all about free expression. It's just funny to me because people worry about these issues and they apply them in the context of law. And they say these are justifications for slavery, this problem or that problem. When we have more laws, there's actually more problems. That we actually see that this whole like age of consent and nudity and all this stuff is actually aggregated. All the things that people would consider like perverse would be aggregated in a world of restriction. Isn't that interesting? What do you guys have to say? I didn't mean to interject too much.
I'll say this, and I come across this a lot too, like especially being out on the streets. People will ask a lot of questions about, well, in what you're explaining, the state of freedom, or a state of anarchy, what would society look like? How will it operate? And they'll go through a list of things. Well, what would you do in this scenario, in this scenario? But that mindset says that they're actually comfortable in the world that we're living in now. right? That they want to see, okay, well, is that going to be better than what we have now? When in fact, what we have now absolutely is slavery, and we have violations of natural rights up and down the list. So that's my statement on that. Obviously, I didn't answer the question indirectly, but Aaron did a pretty good job.
Well, in the true freedom state, we will have people who just like it is now, but people will be monogamous and people will be non-monogamous. You will have all different types of consensual relationships. Maybe some people will want to walk around naked. Maybe most people won't. Maybe they will.
I might
be surprised. That's fine.
Kidding.
Maybe you'll see someone that you would rather not see them naked, or maybe you won't care. Maybe it's because we've been socially conditioned that it wouldn't be an issue. So I think Will said it very well. As people are so they want to latch on to what the way reality is, where we're almost like we have to be told like little children. This goes back to the cosmic adulthood, right? So we almost like we have to be told, or we have to be enculturated or accultured to what is correct in society, and that people can actually be arrested, like Elvis was, for wiggling his body while singing, right? You're wiggling his little finger, and that's an offense where he can be thrown into jail. So like people are so used to this kind of thinking that that literally it's hard for them to grasp what that as long as you're not hurting someone, as long as you're not taking doing something without their consent, stealing something that doesn't belong to you, that's not rightfully yours, that's really the only thing that you cannot do to other people and to their property, and that's it.
Well, I find it funny when people say, "Oh, look at this person do it." They actually bring more attention to it. And so it's like they don't want it to happen, but then by saying that, "Oh, it should be banned, it should not be part of society," they're like it basically bringing it more attention than it has to be, like basically being counterintuitive in its action. So, and that's what law is for the most part, right? I mean, it's counterintuitive. If you want something to change, educate people, share why it's important. Do you need violence to back your ideas? Because then your ideas are probably not the best ideas, sorry to tell you. If you need violence in order to enforce them, and people are not willing to do, partake in those ideas themselves. This is people, again, supply and demand, simple just ideas of voluntary interaction. Voluntary world is what we're looking for. And that's it, minus the violence. So another question I have for you guys, and please guys, anyone in the chat, feel free to give us more questions. Maybe I missed some before, you can always repeat it. I have another question. What virtue do you think people should uphold? So like, is there one virtue you would say people should uphold in their day-to-day lives or teach to their children if you had to name one thing? Now, I know this is just like, these are silly questions for myself, but I think these are good group questions. Aaron?
It's so generic and so basic, a virtue that I would just, try to see yourself in everyone and try to treat them as you want to be treated. Hard to uphold, but I think it's a principle that'll stand forever.
David?
Be as teachable as you can. Strive to be teachable. So in other words, maintain an open-mindedness. Don't be closed-minded to new ideas and new ways of thinking, but also maintain a certain level of skepticism, a certain level of rational thinking, so you don't automatically start to believe things that aren't true because you haven't put them through a correct filter of understanding through the trivium. So really strive to be as teachable as possible, to really and strive. Another way of saying the same thing is maximize your ability to learn the truth.
Will?
Good ones. Yeah, I mean, there's a few of them that come to mind. Humility is one, right? Because it takes a lot of humility to look in the mirror and say, fuck, man, I was wrong. I can't believe I was believing this. I was acting this way, and, suck it up, accept it, and move on and grow from it. And then the second one that I'll say is justice, which is ultimately right action, which in my opinion is one of the most righteous virtues that you can have. Doing the right thing.
Yeah. Of course, I told Aaron earlier, there's like lists of virtues. I mean, they're all connected, but I just wanted to get your views on what do you guys think would be very important? I would say honesty, just because I'm biased toward my honesty book. I pretty much think that leads to all truth. And, having the intent of good intent, having to show that then through action. Let's see. Do we have another question? Here we go. Aside from teaching natural law objective morality as an imperative from those who are aware of it, what other solutions can folks on this path employ for empowerment? Good question. Very good question. I'll let you guys go first again. Aaron, you want to start?
I'll pass the book. I gotta think about it.
If you want, I'll repeat the question.
Maybe just briefly, yeah.
Or I'm saying for David, or David, you want to answer? Okay.
So let me just make sure I understood it. So the question is, other than teaching natural law, what other things can we do as part of this great work?
To empower ourselves. Yep.
Well, I would say applying what we're learning in our own lives. Maybe an example I could use is what I've shared recently on some of my own content, which is if you're struggling with something in your own life, like health-related challenges is a great example. See how you can apply what you've been learning to be that self-owner and solve whatever health problems you have, rather than always looking for an external solution like a pill or a potion or a doctor or something or a shot. So I think, this is a great example. It's, ultimately where the rubber meets the road, where the action comes out, that's where we really see what we've been able to learn. So the teaching part is important, but the applying it in one's own life is really important. I think health is a greatest place to start as any. I've said this even on some of my recent videos, like a great place to start is take a serious, good, hard look at your own health and the things you're struggling with, and see how you can apply, the principles that you've been learning to your health and become, your own healer in a way. So that I think is a great place to start or to finish.
Yeah. Will?
Yeah, well said. Well said for sure. You have to tune the receiver, right? The body to get the signal, clarity, and maintain the receiver of the body, mind, and spirit. But my answer would be animism, which I'll explain briefly. I did a whole presentation on this. It's really a worldview. It's like the oldest spirituality, or where spirituality comes from. All of the religions, took their religion from animism, which is ultimately viewing the world and experiencing the world. It's an engagement at consciousness and energy, that all things are connected, life force energy, all is mind, and then seeking the correspondences between the self and nature. A good way to incorporate the natural law principles is focus on each principle, also known as the Hermetic principles: mentalism, correspondence, polarity, vibration, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender, and go through these and actually discover the correspondences within your own self and in the natural world. Because believe it or not, you can make a garden. I talk about this in conscious parenting, teaching my daughter the Hermetic principles. Just by creating a garden, you could see all the principles in the garden itself. You can discover the correspondences, and you can do this with pretty much anything. And I think that's a good way to really to get involved and to know oneself deeper.
It seems like,
and to harmonize with the natural world, right? So, sorry, Aaron.
It almost seems like because it seems like we take in the knowledge, we want to express that to others. From my standpoint, it seems that teaching others and applying it in your own life and running the experiments, applying it to yourself, it's not one or the other, one before the other. It's you're teaching these things and you're making it a practice. And it sounded like animism is kind of an intermingling of the practical applications to yourself and your life, and the teaching of sharing that with other people.
Yeah,
absolutely. And animism means soul. It's also where animate comes from. right? I mean, everything has life force in it.
Yeah, and actually, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about Logan Hart and a lot of the work that he did on paganism. Sounds a lot like it. And also, when I looked into Taoism and deism of the 1700s, it seems like there's a lot of very connected themes going on. But I would say, if I were to answer this question, if there is an imperative other than natural law, it would be health. But I would say that's related with morality. Because I would say you would have to look at morality not limited to just behavior, and start applying it to yourself in all regards of your life, to a greater holistic worldview, which is why I created my own philosophy, Natureosophy. Now, you can take, that inspiration from that, but I would recommend, delve into natural law, learn from it, learn from all the principles like Will just said, and then, from there you can venture into so many other philosophies as well. And something I just recommend in general is not to stay limited to one use, one philosophy, one way of approaching things, because I really admire Larkin Rose's approach of it's really simple. There is no labels attached. I mean, really, the only label you're attaching yourself to is statism, which is something that it's like you yourself dealt with. It's a belief system. It's not even an ideology or something that is something that is new that we're adding into creation, or something that we're reviving old. It's something that everybody can understand based on their own common sense morality. So I think it's important we learn from both Mark and Larkin and David Icke too. David Icke has a very expansive worldview where he looks at consciousness and looks at things and says, well, is this limiting us or is this expanding our consciousness? It's another way of looking at things. So, having spoken to like 50 plus speakers in the summit, I mean, I can just tell from talking to everybody, it's like everybody's got their own way of how they got there, but we all are reaching the same conclusions based on learning from truth. And that's why, I look at two major distinctions in my work: natural authority versus man-made authority. And if you're looking toward that natural authority, I think you're going to find all the answers, no matter where you find it, as long as you're not putting your authority and all your trust in man for all of your answers, and you can put the trust in yourself because you're part of nature, but then you can't exclude everybody else because they're also part of nature. And that's the point, is you can't just say, well, this is the best or this is not the best. They're all there for a reason. Evil teaches us of good, good teaches us of evil, you teach me, I teach you. It's all there. So, my radical honesty itself is a practice, something that I've put into a practical application of my philosophy, so it's really easy. And it's only under 50 pages, so anybody can practice honesty. They already know what honesty is. They just feel like, I gotta lie. There's gotta be a time. There's gotta be a place, Corey, where I have to lie. There's gotta be. I'm like, no. No, there isn't. So, and I think that would make good conversations another time too. But I have one final question for you guys, and then if you want, we can head off. We've been going for about 2 hours. Unless you guys have any other questions for us in the chat, this is my final question regarding the future, because we have to do a little bit of prophesizing. What do we have to be careful of moving forward? We know that the world is not necessarily going to be open to everything. We know the media is going to start to attack, and the power systems are going to try to hold on to their power. They might want to start resorting to technology, to medicine, all the tools in their tool belt to keep people in their mentality of control. So, what do you think we have to be careful of, you guys, when we move forward? Like, where do you see the future? And, because when you say it, if it's negative, propose a positive solution. Aaron.
I think what we have to be most careful for is staying where we're at and continuing the same thing. I think that it's going to come with, we have to be willing to experiment and to try to get away from our ignorance and try to just become more aware as people, but just being careful for being the same, that's the worst thing we could do at this point.
David?
Yeah, maybe two things here. One thing we need to be careful of is falling back into old ways of thinking. So as we are learning and evolving, as we're coming to understand the true nature of what it means to be a sovereign being and have self-ownership and these principles, but then falling back into the same old behaviors, which basically are giving credence to the old way of thinking, which is that there are external authorities of any level, and that is natural and normal. So that's very dangerous. It's very insidious because it's within our zone of comfort. So it's easy to fall into that trap. And I think it's kind of related to the second aspect I was going to talk about, which is similar. It's really just not fulfilling these principles or not aligning with these principles, even in the small scale. So that principle of correspondence. So as new people come into our lives, or even with the relationships we already have, not holding those relationships up to these principles and allowing things to slip through the cracks, like allowing someone to boss us around or bossing someone else around. So in other words, these things happening in the local domain and not standing true to, the principles, even when dealing with people one-on-one, not defending oneself, like I said earlier, not properly defending your psychology against those who would try to manipulate you, even one-on-one in the local setting. So these are the things that I think we need to be most aware of, because that's where it all starts. The grassroots level is going to then project out through the principle of correspondence. The microscopic will then reflect to the macroscopic.
Okay. Will.
Yeah, well said, man. I wrote down stagnation, which I see stagnation as being comfortable as well. Stagnation is death. We need to understand that this is a forward progress, and we need to evolve and not revolve, right? Revolving in a circle. Getting comfortable is, it's really easy to revert back to bad habits, way of thinking, even health. Especially, we need to be disciplined in our principles and grow and understand that we need to move forward. Mental stability and emotional stability and physical stability, the trinity right there, is something that everyone needs to have a constant eye on, a constant focus, keep in mind. And then, liberty is eternal vigilance. So we just got to keep going. And it's ups and downs, not saying that, but there's a difference. Staying down is one thing. Having ups and downs, you can learn from that, and you can still springboard forward and move past. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome, guys. And if you have any other questions, even you guys yourselves, feel free to mention it. But if I were to answer this question, I would say just what you guys said, basically have faith. Because one of the biggest things that the abolitionists were constantly heading home in their writings was like, do not worry. Like, if we know what we're doing is right, let that be the guide toward everything we do. Like, just like the website voluntarius.com says, if you take care of the means, the ends will take care of itself. This is a common quote. Because the thing is if you know you're heading on the right direction with the best possibility, the best thing you can do, then whatever's in the future, you can worry about that, you can sit and contemplate and be fearful about it, but the best thing you can do is just do with what you know is right at all times. And what will come of it is, some people might not always do right. They may be looking too forward to the future, but you can help them stay present, focus on themselves, focus on what they got to do. And the abolitionists were just constantly talking about this idea of like, have faith. A lot of them were very religious, so they used that. They said, hey, ground our beliefs. If we know this is true, then let's make it true. And guess what? It worked out. They didn't have to make anything true. It already was true. They simply had to embrace it and not live with any worries because the world currently isn't embracing it. It's not like we're inventing anything new. The systems that came in invented something new. They're the ones that hijacked nature. We're not having to reclaim or go back to anything. There's people who use paperwork nowadays who say, reclaim your status, reclaim your freedom. It's like, no, they're the ones who took from nature. We don't have to reclaim anything. They're the ones that turned their back. So it's not so much we have to do anything, but really just embrace our world and do our best. So it's really simple, but we can tend to convolute so much if we focus on the future. Yeah, thank you, Fired Up. Thanks for the chat and all the great resources. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. And all you guys who were complimenting me before, thank you. I'm sorry I was focusing a lot on the questions, but thank you for just complimenting the summit and everything that's been happening, and definitely got a lot more people than I expected. And originally in my mind, I thought like 50 speakers, and it happened. It turned out. I was happy when I had 20. I was like, I'm ready. And then all of a sudden it's like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh shoot, all these people that I actually wanted to join did join. And There we are, right? So this is going to be, the summit is always going to exist, guys, and people will always be able to go back to it. It's going to be that resource I'm going to constantly refer people back to. So this is, when I say it's historic, I mean it's historic because it's going to be out there forever in many different formats, and the next project is going to constantly bring people back to this one in case they want to learn all the fundamentals and everything about what we're talking about. So thank you guys for joining me very much, and thank you, Will Keller, David Greenberg, Aaron Butler, all you guys. You're great. You're awesome. Great content creators. Be sure, guys, to check out their content. You guys can link your content in the chat if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to put their names in the chat for you guys. Okay, that way you guys can check out their works. David Greenberg, Aaron Butler. There we go. Aaron, do you have a specific place where people can find you?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment, yeah. That's fine. You're working on it. Hey, you're with a lot of other people on that. We're all working on it together. But you're with me, man. That's all that matters. I care about that. Care about that, man. Yeah. So, Will, you also have Natural Freedom League, right? NaturalFreedomLeague.com. Right. Well, you also have Chill Will. You call yourself different names on different platforms, but mostly Will Keller. And people can also find you guys on the One Great Work Network. Yeah, OneGreatWorkNetwork.com. I think all of you guys are involved with that. Even Aaron is. He's just behind the scenes. So technically you're involved.
Yep, he's on there. We're all on there.
Yeah,
yep.
Aaron does a lot of production work. Doesn't get all the credit, but he does a lot. He's always there. He's always putting my show on live, and so I have to thank you for that. And Will, you were there for me last night when I had to leave my stream for a bit, so thank you for watching over things. And is there anything else you guys want to finish off on, or anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you to all the viewers and everyone that checked out the summit. And then Corey and Aaron, you guys are fantastic. I love what you do with the summit. You know, this is what it's about, immortalizing a message. And now it'll be up there. You guys, your art form, and now it's an artifact that people can check out, and it's fantastic. So I'm always going to promote the summit, and look forward to your guys' content in the future. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And another resource, if you guys like conferences like this, I just want to mention freedomundernaturallaw.com, right? Is that it, Will?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other conferences that people make, so stay tuned. If you like this type of format, there's a lot of other people who do conferences like this. Another one is Seed, correct? Seed Academy?
Yes.
Seed Truth, something like that.
Seedtruth.com.
Yeah.
That's their website. Yeah, they had their fourth one. It was May in 2020. It was fantastic. You could check out those videos. And then also on the freedomundernaturallaw.com, you could see all the replays from Funnel 1 and Funnel 2.
Awesome. David, you have freedomvibe.art, where you even will advertise for people if they want to, right?
Yeah, freedomvibe.art is my website, and I share, of course, all of the content I create, and I also share, to the degree that I'm able to, the best content. One of the
Oh, you're lagging out a little bit, man.
the summit is...
Oh, we're back. You're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. Am
good.
I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. One of the things that's great, and I think, this would be what I would encourage everybody here to do, especially the people who haven't, is take the time to go through the materials, because this is material that's in the causal plane. And if you don't know what I mean by that, you will when you start going through it. It'll start to make more sense. This is solution-oriented content that's really going to help you up-level your consciousness to understand better the nature of the problems we face and the solutions. It's a really good use of your time. Our time is precious. So why spend another hour just listening to another machination about what's wrong with the political systems and so on and so forth, and how bad the COVID scam was? We know that already. So let's go to the solutions level. So that's why I think when you listen to these talks that Will and myself and Aaron and Corey and everybody else who participated, wow. I mean, this is a really good use of your time. So just take the time, take whatever time you need to go through it.
Good points. And don't be afraid to reach out to people you don't think would be open to this, because you'd be surprised. I reached out to David Icke, I reached out to Larkin Rose, I reached out to these names which I thought I wouldn't be able to contact, but you know, these people, they're just like you and I. They want to get the truth out, they care about other people, and there's a lot of YouTubers out there, self-care YouTubers, people who they're just living their life, and you know, they might be out there, they might have millions of subs, and they're like looking for other smaller channels to help promote, but they don't know them, they don't know what's important, they want to help their followers, they don't know what resource to look to, they feel like it's all just a bit confused. So we can help those people. Just don't be afraid to reach out. You never know what can happen. All right, this is my tip on behalf of like my experience with the summit. And like, if you want to reach out to someone, there's a way. All right, there's a way to do it. You just got to have the persistence and find out how to do it. And of course, you don't want to be annoying, and of course, you have to have really good intentions, and you should. We do. I mean, we're trying to end slavery, but yeah, you know, just something to keep in mind. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me. The End of Slavery Summit 2022. Maybe we'll have another one another year. Maybe that's like a little spoiler. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But I think the future projects are great. So check out the Liberator 2 newspaper, aka online in-person info paper / independent media of your own / whatever it is. It's awesome, whatever it is. So it's going to end slavery. That's what we're here to do. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Take care. Yeah, Crystal, thank you for saying subscribe, share, and like. I'm not one of those people, okay? But if you want to do that, you can do that. Thank you. It's about the message. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Peace out.
Yours.
I unmuted him. Anyways.
Do you want to stream for another couple minutes?
What do you want to do?
I kind of just wanted to say that.
Go ahead, say it. Say it.
All right. Okay. Am I live? Am I hot?
Yeah, you're still alive.
Okay. The last final thing I was gonna say. Beware of anyone that says we have to rethink human rights. Beware of anyone that says this is a brand new scientific discovery. We have to rethink everything. That is someone you have to look at and watch out for, because there is nothing new under the sun at all. Anyone that thinks we need to reconsider what a human is or human rights, it's like there is nothing new here, and it's all an excuse to just destroy the individual sovereignty of the person. And so that's kind of my beware. It's an ominous, you know.
All right.
Beware of anyone who just, oh, the science. It's like, come on. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new going on. It's all the same trick under a new mask. You know.
All right. Thank you, Aaron, for that amazing message. On the history books forever. Thank you, Aaron.
I
think the whole world will appreciate that 100 years from now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was not a hot mic. That was me genuinely unmuting. Thank you, guys. Peace out.